What is up, Breakfast Club? So here's the deal. I'm going to jump on the grenade. Catholic Church in the news again. Pedophilia charges. Horrific. Disgusting. Just bone-chillingly horrendous news. Let's be very clear about this. An abuse of power. From the powerful to the very, very weak, the weakest among us, our children, can't be pushed under the rug, can't be ignored. So that's the first thing in this video that I want to say, and I mean it. And I mean, you can go on for days about the handling of this, and I want to add one more thing. I'm not Catholic. I'm not Catholic. I think this gives me credibility. What I'm about to say next, I think, is given credibility by the fact that I'm not Catholic. I don't have skin in the game. I think there is a lot of nuance to this stuff when you start talking about it in a pull back the lens way in like the tapestry of our society, and that's kind of a conversation that I want to have. But I'm not Catholic, so I don't have that kind of defense mechanism here. What I think you have going on is some blatant double standards. I think you have some blatant anti-Catholic bigotry actually involved in this, especially from the press and the noisemakers. Now that's, you can walk and chew gum at the same time. So I do think the criticizers of this genuinely are disgusted by priests touching kids, and more importantly, the Catholic Church, not dealing with this in anywhere close to a respectable way. However, the focus on pedophilia in the church and in many cases, hyperbolic outrage. So like if they're at a 3, they turn it up to like a 9, but only if it has to do with the Catholic Church. And that's my point here. I think that comes out of hatred of the Catholic Church. So I think you have people who just hate Catholicism. I think predominantly that comes from secular extremists, just Christian bigots in general, and people who don't like anything to do with the surrounding worldview and some of the ethics and the values of Catholicism. And I think they seize on this in a hope to do more than call out the acts of sex abuse, but instead throw Catholics under the bus, tarnish them. And I think a lot of Catholics, especially Catholics that aren't speaking out on this, I think they know that. I think they read those tea leaves, and I think that's why you don't see more of a voicing from them, is because they're smart enough to know, hey, look, a lot of this noise is just hatred of Catholics in general. And why do I say that? Do I say that to protect or cover up the situation? No. I say that because we know, every newsmaker knows, every editor in this country knows that Hollywood, right as we speak, is an infestation of pedophilia. We know that victims have come forward, and what has the response been, by and large? To silence those victims, to shut up that story. That's just one example. So we know Hollywood doesn't just have a problem with sex abuse with women, but is insane amounts of raping children, touching children, and this has been going on 50, 60, 70, 80 years in Hollywood. There is a concerted effort to sweep that out of the headlines and not deal with that. Why? That's not tethered to the Catholic Church. And you might even maybe be able to make a case that in many ways that's tethered to more secular, less religious ideology, if it's tethered to any ideology. Certainly those people in Hollywood are all, they all have leftist politics, and they're very anti-religion. So I think that's the case there. If you run the actual numbers by way of educators, specifically professors, I want to be very clear about this. College professors have the highest number of instances of pedophilia anywhere. It puts the Catholic Church to shame. Now, before you read into this, I'm not talking about college professors sleeping with co-eds. It's not what I'm talking about, because they do that ad nauseum as well. And I definitely think that's an abuse of power. But that's not quite the same thing, and not in my mind either. I'm talking about pedophilia. I'm talking about touching and molesting children. Do you ever hear about it? Do you hear that there's an epidemic in academia of pedophilia? No, you don't. And why? It's because of this double standard that I'm talking about. So within the confines of what I've just said, now let's talk about the actual issue. What I think is happening here is pedophilia is being normalized. I know that for a fact. There's TED Talks. There's literal TED Talks. And, you know, op-ed pieces in the New York Times and op-ed pieces in the Wall Street Journal, etc., normalizing pedophilia. I think it's the new front to social engineering. We've seen that dudes dressing up in their grandma's underpants are now supposed to be treated seriously, as if these people do not have struggles, mental struggles, emotional struggles, pain, which is clearly the case. Instead of doing that, we're acting as though a man isn't a man. It's biological lunacy. It's just absurdity on every level. But that's the norm. And guys like me who have said the gender blurring years ago, 10 years ago, whenever I started on YouTube, I said, look, this is an attempt to tear down normal sexual behavior between human beings, and that's been vindicated 1,000 times. And at what level of insanity are we at now? Men aren't even biological men. It's all just they just come up with new like horizons of the absurdity, right? The French noir that is everyday social engineering headlines. So the new front to that, LGBTQ XYZ, will inevitably be pedophilia. Mark my words. So the very same people now that are beat in the face, that are just up in arms about it, they will be the exact same people that lecture you if you say there's something wrong with touching kids or having sex with kids in this side of 10 years. Mark my words. So all that is in the ethos of people's thinking, you know, that type of stuff. Like for a person who's a non-leftist like myself, you already know that's in the leftist mindset. That if like tomorrow the right celebrities and the right talking heads come out and normalize pedophilia, if the Democratic Party, for example, decides to change its platform to normalize that, those same people who are like touching kids, they will immediately be like, how dare you blame a person with kiddo gender dysphoria or whatever name is barreling down the bend. So sexual perversion and deviance is not frowned on the left, and it's not frowned on by the secular extremists in our society. If anything, calling out sexual deviance is frowned on. So in this one case with the Catholic Church, the normal players that make excuses for sexual deviance are horrified, pull their hair out, horrified, the dramatics, the whole 9 yards. Here's what I'm saying to you. I don't buy that. That being said, regardless of the genuineness of their true concern for kids being manipulated, and regardless of them using the issue to bludgeon, you know, the reputation of essentially the Catholic Church. That's what they're doing here. This is horrific and wrong and evil. And the fact that the Catholic Church shuffles these people around, and the fact that they've covered this up in some instances, and in some instances victimized the victims, is just unspeakably evil. Tie a millstone around your neck and throw yourself into the sea type evil, if you want to be biblical about it. So it's very important that people, including Catholics, voice that, because that's true, and this is wrong, and this needs to stop. In our society, instead of playing games with this issue, we need to take a cold, hard look in the mirror and say, what is not socially or policy or none of that crap that the left always tries to turn your attention to? What is morally wrong with our society? Because this isn't just happening in the Catholic Church. This is happening all over the place. All over the place. They're abusing children sexually. All over the place. You got so many tiers of this. You got sex trafficking right where you live. Guarantee you that. No matter where you live. You have the abuse and the sexual abuse of children all over the place. And it's horrific. It's Sodom and Gomorrah horrific. It's throw sulfur from the sky horrific. And there's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. That's the truth. So be done with the politicking of it all. Be done with the, I'm going to pretend like I'm going to make a big deal about this, but really all I want to do is harm some ideological opponent of mine. We need to start caring about the actual thing, which is the abuse of children. And no matter where that comes from, whether that comes from our side or not our side, we need to actually care about that. And that needs to be the most important thing. That's my opinion on the issue. Thanks for listening.